Hi everyone, it is Atia here at Booking It with Atia, and today we are getting into my weekly wrap up. So this is all the books I read during the week of May 20th to the 26th. And before we get into it, I just want to remind you to make sure you are subscribed and that you hit the notification bell so you are notified every time I put out a new video or am doing reading sprints. Also, make sure to check out my Etsy shop as well as my Pango Books storefront where you can shop my unhauled shelves, as well as a link to my book club and my Discord. My Patreon is also linked down below where you can further support my bookish content creating endeavors for as low as $3 a month. And if you are an author with a book out or a book coming out, you can check out my Kofi where you can commission a spotlight or feature. Now, jumping into the reading I did this past week, I DNF'd no books. Hooray! Yay, clap, applause, hooray, which is great.
Now,
in terms of the novels, I finished 6 novels last week, which is great. It was a great reading week. The first one was The Secret Library by Kekla Magoon. This is a middle grade fantasy novel that recently came out in May, and it is about a girl, what's her name? Dela? Her name is Delilah, but she has a nickname and I can't remember what the nickname is. But Delilah, she is the daughter of this very wealthy, rich, prominent woman. She is biracial. Her mother is white, her father is black, and her father actually passed a few years ago. And she has a very fraught relationship with her mother, who is trying to groom her to take over the family business. She was really close with her grandfather. However, the grandfather has since passed, and she is dealing with grief. She's dealing with trying to stand up to her mother, have a relationship with her mother, and she gets invited to this secret library. And in this library, it houses all of the secrets of a family, big, small, medium, and you can open up a book and be taken back in time to a section of your family's history. I loved the idea of blending time travel with a portal fantasy, and I also love the magical library element. I think I said this in either a previous weekly wrap-up or maybe the book mail where I received the physical copy of this book, but I love a magical library. There's something about it that is so fun. I will say with this one, I did not enjoy the ending. It felt rushed and like it came out of nowhere. I would have appreciated a bit of a resolution to the story, but I did enjoy the twist, and I ended up giving The Secret Library 3.75 stars. Next up, we have A Woman Is No Man by Itaf Room. This follows 3 generations of Palestinian women, and we meet Isra when she's 17? She's either 17 or 19. And she is arranged to marry Adam, who is a Palestinian. His family moved to America to escape the occupation of Palestine by Israel. And so we do have a bit of that history coming into play because, well, let me start. When we meet Isra, it's the 90s. So we can't have her story without the impact that the invasion of Israel onto Palestinian land had. And so we meet Isra, and we follow Isra as she marries Adam, moves to America with him and his family, and then also deals with motherhood and being in this family that, you know, she's expected to follow certain rules and behave certain way and not leave the house and do certain things, and she is really just struggling with this and feeling like she is trapped. And then we also follow Farida, who is Adam's mother, so Isra's mother-in-law, and we get Farida as she is attempting to, I don't want to say groom Isra, but have Isra in the house while also raising her daughter Sarah. and her other sons. And so we get their timelines a little bit side by side a little bit. And then we also follow Deja. Yeah, I believe the daughter's name is Deja, and she is Isra's eldest daughter, and we follow her in 2008, and she is getting ready to graduate high school, and we find out that something has happened to both of her parents, but we like don't know until we keep reading the book. And so it's just Florida and Florida's husband Khalid who are raising Deja and her three sisters. And Deja does not want to get married. She wants to finish school. She wants to go to college. And so we are following these three very different Palestinian women, as they are, well, two Palestinian women, one Palestinian American woman, who are trying to navigate being Palestinian in America and what that means for them in relation to their culture and their history and their religion. And this book is tough, but it's beautiful and it's well needed. I'm glad I didn't rush through this one, and I took my time with it. And it definitely investigates so many things dealing with religion versus culture and how those two things are very different, but they can inform one another, as well as especially culture that is impacted by imperialism, because the culture of Palestine was very different pre the invasion of Israel versus post the invasion of Israel, as well as gender expectations and the toll that can have on mental health and motherhood, as well as other things. But those are like the three big things that are dealt with. I will say there are heavy trigger warnings for domestic abuse, depression, verbal abuse, misogyny and sexism, as well as sexual assault. So just be wary of those going into it. But otherwise, I really enjoyed it. I gave it enjoyed it is such a weird word for a book like this. I appreciated it, and I gave it 4.75 stars. Then I read Who the F Are You by Huda Fahmy. This is a young adult graphic novel that is it's not completely autobiographical about the author, but it is heavily influenced and informed by her own growing up and exploring who she is. And this is about Huda, who is like, she is used to being the only or one of the only hijabis in her school, and then, or in the community rather, and then her family moves to a predominantly Muslim community where she is no longer the only hijabi, and being the only hijabi was like kind of very central to her identity. And she's like, who am I if I'm not the only hijabi in the entire school? And we are following her as she is trying to decide and figure out who she is at the start of high school. And it's a hilarious and relatable tale and a relatable look at a young Muslim girl trying to figure out who she is, separate from but also alongside her Muslim identity. And I just really loved it, and I will be picking up Who the F Cares. I already have it checked out from my library, and I gave Who the F Are You 5 stars. Then we have Charisma's Turn, another young adult graphic novel about Charisma. She is always getting into, not always, but she has a tendency to get into trouble at school, fights, talking back to the teacher, things like that. But then she finds this interest in a eco activism club, and she learns how to talk about her feelings and just channel her energy in a different way. And I thought this was a really accessible story that looks at the different ways children learn and can be engaged in their own education, and how sometimes you just have to find a different way to do that. And I also love that the importance of having multiple adults in your corner was definitely explored with this one, and I gave Charisma's Turn 4 stars. Then we have 4 Eids and a Funeral. This is actually an upcoming release. I listened to an advanced listener copy via NetGalley. This comes out, I forget what day in June, either June 4th or June 11th, but this follows former best friends turned enemies, Saeed and Tiwa. When we meet them, they are grieving the loss of their favorite librarian. That's what brings them back together. So Saeed went away to boarding school and Tiwa stayed in the town, and they end up separating and growing distant over the few years, and you find out why as the story goes along. But then they are kind of thrust back into one another's orbit because they decide that they want to save their local Islamic center, which was burned down, and this is like a staple in their community for the Muslim community. And I really enjoyed the former best friends, the enemies to lovers tale. And I appreciated how diverse the Muslim community was depicted in this story. So we have Tiwa, she is black, but like I forget what country in Africa she is from. I want to say Nigeria, but I'm not exactly sure. I forgot. And then we have Saeed, who is Bangladesh. And you also have other members of the community who are from other countries, who are from, just like being in America and things like that. And I just loved how full-fleshed and diverse the Muslim community was in this book. And there's a multitude of storylines along the budding, renewed relationship between Saeed and Tiwa that allows for this to be a really fully fleshed out and realized story about hope and community, second chances, and self-discovery. And I gave For Eads and a Funeral 3.75 stars. Then we have The American Queen by Vanessa Miller. This is a fictionalized version of a true story about the only queen to be on American soil. We follow Luella, who is a recently freed slave from chattel slavery, and she, as well as her husband and several slaves from the plantation that they used to be on, they decide to leave and find a land of their own to build their own community where they are not oppressed and they're not under the threat of danger, because even though they are freed, they are still working the land for their former slave master, and they are not being paid for this labor because the former slave master is claiming that he has no money. And so they decide to leave, and they create essentially this kingdom called the Happy Land, and Luella ends up being the queen. This was lackluster storytelling. I don't know what it was, but something was missing for me and wasn't clicking for me. It just did not feel urgent enough. I don't know. It was a very weird experience reading this, because I was reading it and I was like, okay, this is an interesting story, but it's not being told in an interesting manner or in a particularly well done manner. And I appreciated how Luella was afraid to show her love for those around her, but then we see her kind of on that journey of learning the importance of showing her love. It's an important forgotten history, and I'm glad that I read The American Queen, which I ended up giving 3 stars. Next, we're gonna move on to the manga. I read Sora and the House of Monsters, Volume 1, which I gave 4 stars. One Piece, Volume 2, which I gave 5 stars. The Ice Guy and the Cool Girl, Volumes 2 and 3, and I gave both of those 4 stars. I also read A Side Character's Love Story, Volume 2, which I gave 3.75 stars. Then there was Witch Hat Atelier, Volume 8, which I gave 5 stars. A Sign of Affection, Volume 2, which I gave 5 stars. Our Dreams at Dusk, Volume 4, which I gave 4.5 stars. I also read Solo Leveling, Volume 1, which I gave 5 stars, as well as Inspector Volume 3, which I gave 4 stars. On to the picture books, starting with The Kindest Red. This is the follow-up to The Proudest Blue, which I really loved. And this is a story about Faisal and her classmates creating the type of world that they want to live in with kindness. And I just really thought that was super cool and really cute. And I borrowed this book from the library, but I do want to eventually add it to my personal collection. Next up, we have Saffron Ice Cream. And this is about a little girl from Iran who is excited to go to an American beach and tells what she loved about going to the beach back in Iran. Then we have a Fresh Princess, and this is inspired by Will Smith, the Fresh Prince. And this is a girl with a lot of personality who moves to a new city, and she deals with feeling out of place in an unfamiliar neighborhood. We also have Moon's Ramadan, which follows the moon through its lunar cycle during the month of Ramadan all over the world, which is really cool. Then we have How to Trick the Tooth Fairy, which is a funny story about a little girl who loves pranking, and she is trying to out prank the Tooth Fairy, who also loves to prank people. Then we have Love in the Library, which is a story about a young woman and man who meet and fall in love in a Japanese American internment camp over their love of books, which I thought was really sweet and really beautiful. Also very heartbreaking given the circumstances. And this is actually based on the author's maternal grandparents. Next up, we have Baseball Saved Us. This is about a little Japanese American boy as he details his experience in Japanese American internment camps and how the recreational activity of baseball helped keep morale up within these dire circumstances. And the last picture book that I read was A Flicker of Hope, and this tells the story of a little girl waiting for her papa to return from migrant work alongside the migratory patterns of monarch butterflies, which was really cool. And that is everything that I finished during the week. Now, I did make progress in 5 books. I made progress in The Lotus Palace, Liar's Game, The Partner Plot, Top Story, and Bricks and Murder. And with all of that, my total reading comes to 3,337 pages and 12 hours, 31 minutes. And that is everything that I read, all of my thoughts for the past week of reading. Make sure to hit the like button and let me know down in the comments what was your favorite or least favorite or most surprising book of the past week. Make sure you are subscribed and that you've hit the notification bell so you're notified every time I come out with a new video or am doing reading sprints. Make sure to check out all of the links down below to my Etsy shop, my Penguin Book storefront, my Patreon, my Kofi, my Discord, and my book club, as well as check me out on all of the social medias, Instagram, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And I will see you in another video. Bye.
I ain't living for the moment. I see what's mine and I want it. Hungry like a Pac-Man. I'm Bruce Wayne and Batman. I'm Naruto with a Hanzo. Got a sharp mind like I'm Einstein. Put some copy brain, so it's all mine. Check it for me, I'm in the sky.